single family zoning in California is dead. That balance piece we didn't strike. The cost of doing something exceptionally large or exceptionally well is basically almost everything else.
How close do you think we are to institutional capital coming into the microdevelopment space?
We all get the same 24 hours. So why is it that some people build so much more with them? I'm Brian Coons, and this is the Builder Nation podcast, where we talk to top performers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries to uncover the architecture of a meaningful and fulfilling life. Let's get into it.
Today we have a absolute legend in the real estate development space, Jared Jones. So tell me, California has over 7 million single family homes, and every one of them can now technically legally have 4 units on the property under new state laws, which is the biggest opportunity in modern real estate history. But the punchline is that less than 5% of those eligible properties will ever pull a permit. And so the real game isn't building skyscrapers, it's tastefully increasing density in neighborhoods that already work. So today, like I said, I'm sitting down with my man, Jared Jones, co-founder of Middle Housing Partners, one of the few people actually executing this playbook at scale, doing hundreds of projects, millions in capital, and a full stack of systems that turn assets into better assets. So this episode isn't theory, it's how to profit from solving the housing crisis. So tell me, why is microdevelopment the most slept on wealth strategy today?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think the frame that you gave for it is one that I use a lot, which is essentially single family zoning in California is dead. And people are just starting really to wake up to that opportunity. And from the perspective that I look at this, it's like we get to do the value add that an apartment complex gets to do in 4 years, right? Like it takes 4 years to go vertical or wrap up on one of those, and say that they're 200,000 in a unit and it's worth 400,000. And so bottom line, they deliver 100% return, on capital, but you split that between 5 years or 4 years and you've got a 15 to 18% or 22% IRR, whatever that is. We just get to do that in a year now. And we don't have to go find the special project. We make the special project. And so the opportunity in this is endless, because not only in order to force that kind of IRR, these apartment complexes have to build like mammoth, really great amenities, like super luxury, lovely, great. Problem is, that's not what we need. The state doesn't need that. We don't need more of that kind of housing. Not saying nobody will take it. They'll take it. What we need is that quiet density that you referred to, where you can tastefully create housing options. And like, I feel like the massive opportunity here is to reimagine the way that we see our neighborhoods in California. You go to a lot of these places in Europe and even in the East Coast, and grandma lives like 7 doors down from their grandchild and from their kids 6 doors down the other way, because there's multiple different kinds of housing options within their own community. And suburban sprawl, it's kind of screwed that opportunity over. And now we have the opportunity in our generations to solve a problem that we've been handed. And the problem is so massive. The total volume of units in California is about 14.5 million total housing units. Well, we have a 3.5 million unit housing shortage, according to the state government. That could be high, low, don't really care. But 3.5 on 14 means for every 3 houses you see on a street, we need a 4th. And the bulk of that need is for that middle housing space. That's workforce housing. That's what's needed. So if I went out and built my wildest dream, like 10,000 units a year, like that's the stretch goal, right? If I go out and do that, we will be one drop in the bucket over an entire career. And the amount of equity creation, just very, very quick numbers. If you say, hey, we're building units that are worth 400 and they cost 200 all in. Well, the amount of equity creation on 10,000 units a year, you can do the math, but it's a lot. And so that's why I look at this. It's like you look at the market cap on this opportunity. Then you also look at grandma gets to live 7 doors down from their grandkid, or even maybe in the same backyard. Like all of those things push into not just, you know, doing good stuff, but being rewarded for that. And so, like, all of these things are very virtuous and they are also profitable.
So why do you think so many people are getting hyped up on like SB10 and these super dense projects when the gold is in like the small repeatable projects?
I mean, you've got me. No, look, I see it, especially for people that are used to seeing a certain product. They feel like that's the way that it can be done. So I always say to people, I'm like, Lennar is not my competition, right? Like they're not coming out, they're not rolling out of bed to do this. And by the way, look, I am very abundant. Like I don't even believe there is competition. That's not a real thing. But if there were competition, it's definitely not the big builders because they don't roll out of bed for less than 20 million bucks. And so if you can only make 300 or 500 or $1 million on one project, they're like, we just went through this full process. And yes, maybe you did it in a year. Great. But also, it's still just as much of a pain in the ass as a lot of the bigger projects. And so, from their frame, it doesn't make sense. Super cool. I'll just keep doing it.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I hear that. I mean, I hear that all the time. And that's why you see a lot of contractors keep saying they want to just bigger and bigger projects because there's more margin, right? Or whatever they want to call it. But I have the same, yeah, the same outlook on it. But yeah, I mean, that's what they say is there's, the more margin or just bigger units mean if everything goes perfectly right, the cap rate changes in your direction, you make a lot more money. But I think it's a lot too operationally. A lot of people have some issues with being able to systemize something that has these more repeatable, smaller scale projects.
Yeah.
So that's something I really want to dig in with you. Like, I mean, you guys have done a ton of projects. What is it, like 500 plus right
Mhm.
now that you guys have
Yep.
done? So, I mean, like, if somebody's looking to scale something like this, how do they do that with all the moving pieces of a development project?
Hey guys, if you're a business owner, high income earner, or investor who's been thinking about getting into real estate development but don't have the time to manage the process, this is for you. My company partners with people like you to help unlock the potential of your properties or even source and manage new small scale development projects. We manage hundreds of ADUs and infill development projects across Southern California, and our team knows how to simplify the process so you can benefit from the upside without managing contractors, permits, or design headaches. Whether you want to develop your own property, explore ways to offset taxes, or just learn how the development model works, head to thebuildernation.com/partner. That's thebuildernation.com/partner and see how we can help you build more with the same 24 hours. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, so what we ended up doing is going vertically integrated. So we still do our own acquisitions. I started off in flipping and real estate sales, and so we still have that vertical. And now it mainly just serves these opportunities. But planning and like the building plans, the design portion of this was actually a major constraint for us. And so after about 2 years of doing this, hundreds of units in, we brought in our designer in-house. Because I say designer, we've got 19 on that team now. But there's so many nuances to these laws. A lot of the holdups that we had were in fights that we shouldn't even be having. Like they were very simple fights to win if we knew exactly what we were doing as a company. And so we took a lot of bad advice from contractors and architects that were drawing up plans for us in the beginning. So there's that piece, and then like construction, bringing that in house. We now have our A and B license, so we do all of our own construction, but we do it through subs. But it is a very good way to have good projections on your cost and making decisions toward further scalability. And so like that is very valuable to us. And then there's also margin in it when we're doing it within partnerships so that it actually can feed growth to the business. In the management, we knew that when we were densifying properties, nobody's going to manage these properties while you're building units in the backyard and there's an active renter living there. That's no fun. And so we're like, all right, well, I guess it's us. And so those pieces, in order to be able to scale, were pieces to have unlocked. Now, if I could go back in time and know what I know now, I would have started out very quickly doing those pieces and seeing that cycle when done well, is very scalable. It's once again, I'm going to use the same phrase. It's a virtuous cycle because when we have problems, each part speaks to each other very quickly. And so we're like, oh, we don't like that floor plan. It doesn't rent well. We don't do that anymore. And we have plans in process. We switch them. Like we'll make those changes in process, real time, and we try to stay away from knee jerk. The bigger we get, the harder it is to turn that ship. But when it's time to build a plan set, we're like, hey, why did we use these members? Like, I think that we could do something different. Can we engineer that differently to save $1,200 or whatever? Which $1,200 by itself may not be that big of a factor, but multiply that by 100 units. Okay, that's something. And so those are the kinds of pieces that have been very valuable to us. And I would say that either upfront, like if you're starting to try to do this, you're not going to be able to hire resources right away, like as in-house. However, whoever you do use, they should be practitioners. Like, you should not be taking rental advice from a construction manager. You shouldn't be taking that from a plan design company either. Like, unless they're doing what we're doing and they're doing their own build to rent, they don't know shit about shit, And so it's totally fine. They know how to design you a plan set. But one of the things that I know you already know, is that the cities have these pre-approved plan sets. In general, those pre-approved plan sets are nothing that we would ever build every once in a while. But the reason for that is because they're designing like 1,000 square foot one bedroom. I'm like, I don't need 1,000 square foot one bedroom. That's not affordable. Like, so it's those kinds of things that you see out in the market that may be commercially viable from a perspective of, I want my grandma to live in the backyard and this is what she would love. Okay, cool. But that's the exception to the rule. It's not the rule. Like, the rule for an investor is, how do I deliver a product to the market that's super needed, but is also financially viable? That's the answer. And so, that's kind of my thing when it comes to scale. It's make sure that the people that you get on your team, like, are doers and they are actually actively involved. Just because an architect can draw up your ADU does not mean you should hire that architect. They should be specialists. They should have direct feedback, either for themselves or at least with a ton of investors with real feedback.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So how do you design an ADU that's needed in the market and also financially makes sense?
Well, it's funny. We have a product that most people think is insane, and that is our 749 square foot 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And as we were looking at the demand in our market, the amount of people that were trying to stretch into or squish into our 2 bedrooms because they just couldn't quite afford the 1,100 square foot, main unit on our properties. I mean, it was just a huge list. And so my wife and I, our first place was a 912 square foot condo, which 3-bed, 2-bath. And it was small, but it lived, and honestly, at that time, I never even thought about it like, oh, this is super tiny. I'm like, oh, it's my house. It works. Somebody brought that up. They're like, yeah, we really want to do 3-bed, 2-baths, but then we hit those $30,000 impact fees. If we go to 800 or 900 square feet, and in California, if you stay under 750, you avoid impact fees. So as we were looking at it, I'm like, dude, the math is there. I'm not a mathematician, but if I've got a hallway that runs for the whole width of my 30-foot property, it's probably about 90 plus square feet that I'm wasting. And so I'm like, I'll bet you we could figure out something. And so one of the guys on the team brought me something. He's like, hey, what do you think about this? And it's the beauty. Like, I'm here slinging real estate, and the guys across the hall that's designing these things. So anyways, Jose on our team brought me this concept, and it tickled my brain enough where I'm like, no, we're figuring this out. And so then we just push back and forth and back and forth. Now we have like 4 or 5 different versions, but that unit we build, like, for our fund, we deliver that to our fund at like $150,000. And its market value, we haven't sold one, but I can extrapolate. and it's somewhere in the 375 to 425 range. Now, we rent those out for $2,400 to $2,500 a month. The market rent for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, albeit they will be 1,000, 1,100 square feet, but they're $3,200 to $3,600 a month. And so when I get to put a family in the same neighborhood that they can't afford the $3,600 house, but they can afford the, 2,400, like that's magic. And so we love that. And we love this product over like an apartment complex because we create a little yard. Like they've got a nice little yard that they can have dogs, like they can do their thing. They get to live in the area that they want to be in. And for a lot of these people, like our renters, a ton of them are people that grew up in the neighborhood. And I like that hits for me. I love that so much. Anybody that knows Riverside, that's it's upside down right there, but that's the rain cross. Like my community is imprinted on me. Like I love it. And so if I can create spaces where people that have grown up in my community get to stay here, that's the dream. Like we love that so much. So financially viable, that's what we see. Now, by the way, that is what we deliver to the fund for. Like our market, if we were to sell this to an investor, we sell those. So that's $200 a foot. We sell them at $250 a foot to people, like if they wanted to build them. But that's not our core business model. We don't really want to go out and build for a whole bunch of people. That's not our jam. We want to build for us. But our costs are less than $200 a foot. So, you can achieve those for probably about $50 a foot less as an operator, pretty sustainably. So you can, if you're operating it and GCing it, 150 is a pretty good mid target for delivery for your own units to yourself. So anyways.
Wow. So yeah, 3 to 749 square feet. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you're building at 200 a square foot is what you're saying?
So basically the last piece that we brought in when we were figuring out how to scale is we're like, well, we were doing it in a lot of partnerships, but like true partnerships, and or we were doing a lot of work for other investors and helping them find and build and do the whole thing. And a lot of the constraint was like their unfamiliarity with doing this kind of stuff. So even though we were running the operation, all of it for them, they'd come back and they're like, oh, dude, that's $2,000 more than we thought. And we're like, well, shit, like go get a quote from somebody else. It's actually $8,000 more. Like, and so what we figured out over a period of time is if we wanted to grow quickly, we needed to bring on capital. And so we started a private equity raise. So when we bring on partnerships or private equity, now we charge a mid rate, right? So it's like, if you go out and ask Joe contractor over here to build you 10 ADUs over a year, he's going to say, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that for you for $200 a foot. His normal rate though is like maybe $225 or $300, but his normal rate's going to be between $300 and $400 a foot. And so for us, we're like, hey, we need to do this in a way that our company is profitable. Each vertical has to justify itself, but where it's a good deal for our partners. And so that $200 a foot is kind of that marker where we can't really find viable options at scale that are less than that. And so that's kind of the marker that we have chosen to create at.
Okay, so how do you make all of the vertical integrations work together the way you are?
Yeah, I mean, at first, not very well. Like I now have a very strong belief that if you want to do anything amazing in life, that you are just going to be signing up for a lot of pain. And it's like, how many flaming pits can I fall in and keep running still? And as long as the answer is all of them, you're going to win, And so in the process of that, it was really difficult to figure out the pieces. So we use monday.com, and like our construction and design team and property management and sales all operate off of that. Yeah. And so we go in and see the same notes from everybody. So that's good. But then even on like a more personal basis, like we're all in the same office. So we run into problem. We're like, hey, what were we thinking here? Or what happened there? But even still, like we, about a year and a half ago, almost two now, we brought on a operations manager, and then he's grown into partnership with us. And that's his job, is to help us all speak to each other, and not just speak. He is a process engineer. Like that is his kind of career path or whatever. And so looking at like, how do we place things in different orders to make sure that we're not hitting these stopping points as much. And so, and we fuck up all the time. All the time. Like that's the common thing. But one of the things that we did go through in this growth process that I want to be very clear, I was telling you, before we got on, but I have a lot of advice for me 4 years ago. I don't have advice for you because I don't know all the things you know. But one of the things that I wish I knew 4 years ago is we had this identity that we were kind of fuck ups, but we were in a good opportunity and won every once in a while. We have completely shifted that mindset. And we're like, no, actually, we're pretty damn great at what we do. And also that means, it's a feature. It's not a failing. Like, this is hard. Like, this is difficult stuff. And so, yes, you are going to step into flaming pits. Doesn't mean you were a failure. That thing failed. Like, how many light bulbs did Edison try out before he actually created the one that we still use today? And so we shifted our identity about a year and a half ago, where we finally were starting to feel like, hey, actually, no. You've already done hundreds of these units, and yeah, none of it's perfect. Development's messy. It's hard, but we're getting much better at it, and we're getting faster at it, and we're becoming more profitable. And so if we didn't keep through that pain, like we wouldn't get there. So as I look back and want to give advice to myself, that's what I would say is take on that identity. This is going to be hard. But if your why is very big, like you can push through all of that pain, and literally this opportunity, you said it at the beginning, but there will be multiple, probably tens of billionaires created out of this opportunity right now. And I'm not exaggerating. Like that's not even it's
Yeah. So someone who is maybe earlier on in the journey, somebody who's actively a developer, but they are still maybe playing small. They're still playing small. How do you get from the point of a few projects going on to the point where you're doing more without just ruining your life in the process, right? Just taking on so much work that you can't even breathe.
Yeah, so I can't actually tell you that because I literally did. Now I'm going to be
Did the
emotional.
opposite.
Yeah, no, I actually did ruin my life in the process.
How so?
And well, like I have not shared this online. So we took on a ton of stuff, and in that process, like I said, everything's messy, and I'm onboarding investors that are used to just flipping properties with me or whatever. Well, one of those investors was my dad. We did exceptionally well for him. Like he made a ton of money, but we were like in my whole career, I was always the operator for him. Well, as we were growing, we needed more policies and procedures and systems. And that was very offensive to him because it's like, no, it was this thing. And so about just over a year ago, like got into a position where he was upset about something very minor, like on a property that we own together. And like he was insistent that I be the one that deal with it, even though I've got 30 on staff that can deal with that at that time, and so it got to the point where he was blowing me up, and he said, well, maybe we shouldn't do business together anymore. And I said, I agree. And so that sucked. But what happened over the next year is like we became estranged relatively quickly. I was just like, yes, our relationships can't be sustainable with each other if you're beating me up because the lawn is turning brown. Like we can't do that. I've created 30 some odd units for you in the last 3 years. Like I don't have, 90 some odd units. I don't have that bandwidth, And so that has been very hard to be estranged from my family, not all my family, from my dad. But ultimately, what I learned through that process is that it doesn't matter who it is. If that person, like every time you get a phone call from somebody, if you feel like that, like, oh, yeah, that's not good. That's a sign. And so part of this process through figuring out that we weren't fuck ups was starting to push back and be like, actually, no, that inspection didn't go well because that's what happens. We'll fix those two things, whatever. But like when I did not do this with slow, steady balance, there's no question. At the same time, the massive benefit that people like my dad received from this it's exceptional. Like when I look back at what happened for him, super lovely, and his heirs will thank me for years to come. That's fine. But the point is that was part of the process of figuring out that private equity or joint ventures with people that are limited partners was the only real path, because then they're not talking about every inspection. They're not driving by and looking at every lawn. We're accountable to how quickly things get rented out and things like that. But really, that balance piece, we didn't strike. I will say this, though, that what we are looking at right now as a company, and we are looking at for the next 5 or 10 years, if you would have tried to tell me 4 years ago as a flipper that we would be where we're at right now, I would have told you that you were out of your mind. Like there was no way. And what our vision is for the future is it's significantly different. So the pain was a long time coming. Things like this don't just break the relationship. There's other things that go into that. But my point is, I don't know that balance, if anybody ever really wants to like go big, I don't think that balance is the answer. Alex Hormozy talks about that a lot, right? And it's that thought process of, he loves what he does and he's very passionate, and he's like, I get a lot of enjoyment out of my work. And so who cares how many hours I work? Like, what does that have to do with anybody else but me? I enjoy it. So for anybody that wants to get into this and start out small but make it big, you can do it if you're willing to pay a very heavy price. And I'm not saying you have to lose your family. Like, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that the cost of doing something exceptionally large or exceptionally well is basically almost everything else. Like you are making a choice of what you want in life. And I have balance, like I try, you can see up there, I got my family. I care deeply about that. And so just like I force myself to do more business, I force myself to schedule the vacation. I just got back from New York with one of my kids, spent the weekend there with them. And so these are things that we can plan and schedule. But if you want to move into volume, it's going to be a lot of time and a lot of sacrifice, but the opportunity is very real.
Yeah. So balance is difficult, but not impossible when you're scaling.
Gary Keller says that there is no such thing as balance. There's only counterbalance. So, right? Like,
Explain
and I
that to me.
believe that. It's like, yeah, we try the best that we can, but the pendulum's always swinging. You just got to kind of push it the way that you need it to go. But I will say that passion is an amazing driver. And so I'm now solving for something completely different than I was solving for 4 years ago. And since that's the case, I care very deeply about what we're doing as a company. And I care about it not for my company. Yes, they need to win and continue to grow, but I care about it for the community. Like I care about it for the other investors that are out there, but mostly I care about this for that demographic that has not been built for 30 years. Like,
So when did solving this housing crisis become personal to you?
I would say that it's probably been about 1.5 years where that really became a major shift in mindset for me. And oddly enough, it was around the time that I started telling myself that our company was doing great things. And then I got to see a little bit, I was so focused on, he won't, he, like whoever, like wanted this accomplished in 3 months and it took 3.5. And it's like, we totally screwed that up, And so once I could get myself out of that headspace, and a couple of my business partners were very clear with me. They're like, dude, this is crazy what we're doing. Like, not only are we doing a lot, but we're doing it for very little money, relatively speaking. And like, we should be very proud. We should not. And so once I kind of got that view, but Ethan, one of my business partners, really is passionate about that middle space as well, and seeing how it affects the tenants' lives. He runs our property management company and also manages construction. But as he was talking to me about that, and then I started offboarding a lot of the weight that was like dragging us, then I was able to start looking at the broader impacts. And I was doing a lot of research for our fund and looking at the macroeconomics of this and the problems, the socioeconomic issues that surround housing. And like, I don't want to get too wooey here. Like, I care deeply about people that are not seen and heard. And this generation that's coming up, we have not paid attention to them from a housing perspective. If you were like a younger millennial, nobody built any housing for you. Like, it's insanity. And so once I started understanding what the problem was, then I'm like, oh, this is way bigger than me. This is way bigger than my company. Who cares like what our valuation ever even becomes? Like, how do we do enough of this so that we can convince capital markets that it's viable, so that it makes it easy for everybody to do, so that it solves our housing crisis, and so that other states see that and they start implementing it. And we relook at the way that the United States lives together. And to me, when a dad, I'm going to be emotional, sorry, but when a dad gets to coach a soccer team instead of sitting in 2 hours of traffic each way, like, I won. My company won when we did that. And that will impact that kid's life forever. He'll remember that his dad coached his soccer, or, you know, that mom coached her daughter's basketball team, or whatever. Like, these things are amazing. And that is the best stuff in life. And so to me, like, the cost is the cost. Like, I'm going to pay it. I will do what is required. That's what I will do. And so if my vision is big enough that we have something that we were trying to solve for, then I'm going to move into that. And if you would have told me a couple of years ago that I would be waking up at 4 a.m. To come to my office and work for 2 hours before I started working out, I also would have said, that is not going, you cannot pay me enough money to do that. Now, like, I love it. Like, I get so much energy from what I'm doing now that I'm very clear on my why. And
Yeah.
motivator, money is not an amazing motivator. It's pretty good, but it satiates relatively quickly. If I could look at myself years ago where I'm at now, from not a financial perspective, but from an understanding and an energy perspective, I would have done whatever I could back then to get straight to where I'm at right now. Because flipping houses, I was never trying to solve a problem except for money. You know, I was meeting a market need, but it did not bring me passion. And this does. And so I could do it all day long, and I could talk about it all day long, which you can see we're probably wearing on. But for me, I would bet on that version of me all day long, because I'm never fighting for this unit. You know, when the city's punching me or telling me that I'm wrong, like, I'm not fighting for that unit. I'm fighting for the next 100, but now I'm fighting for a movement. I'm fighting for people. Like, I care about that dad and that mom, and I care about those kids. And when I get to solve for that, like, that gives me so much energy and excitement that I just think that the world needs to change for the better. And a lot of that looks like hearkening back to the days when local builders just built their own communities. And that's what I want. That's what I want to see. And I want to honestly empower other people to do that. Or if they don't want to do it, send us money. Like, we're good at making people money. We know how to do that. But I don't care who you send the money to. Use it to do something good. Build some housing for people that actually need it. Like Bitcoin, Schmitcoin. Like, who needs that? Like, you can do well by doing good. That's a possibility. And that's what we believe.
Wow.
You can do well by doing good. I love that. So you made one other comment that I kind of liked, was, you said you can't pay me enough money or you couldn't have paid me enough money to wake up in the morning. And I think a lot of times it's not money, it's purpose. And for you, I it it I hear it in your voice, right? Like, so what for middle housing partners, what is the purpose? What's the vision over the next 5 to 10 years? Like what makes it a win?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now we've got like 540, 50 units in process at the moment. Like, so business wise, like I want that number to be 10,000. Like that, which is a lot, and that's insane, and that's great. Like, but that's what I want. But what I really want is I want to change the neuroplasticity of the cities and of the neighbors and see that there are viable solutions to solve the thing that is the problem that hits every one of us every day. There is not one person that you know that does not have someone in their life that is affected by underservice of housing. Like everybody's affected by it, and we're not solving it. And we live in such an amazing place to do that. So a win for us looks like creating a model of mass adaptation that other people can look at and be like, hey, these guys are jokers. We can do twice as good as them. Great. Please do. Like, do it. That's our goal. That's what looks like a win to us.
That's amazing. How close do you think we are to institutional capital coming into the micro development space?
I think we're pretty close. I think that there's lots of conversations around it. That has been one of the things that I put a lot of time into in the last year. In talking about like systematizing things. We have partnered up with a company out of LA that runs a very large fund. Our fund's only $20 million. And so we've raised like bootstrapping 14.8 of $20 million. They've come in and are helping us, but what they're doing is helping us systematize all of our operations from a framing perspective towards institutional capital. So it's like, yeah, I can give you your financial statements and stuff, but if I run the process properly, when I'm going through my growth phases, and I can show institutional, like, hey, here's what we projected, here's our, like our high and low scenario, and here's what happened, and here's the return, and you do it all in a very systemic way, which is very difficult to understand what that would even look like. But this guy's been doing it for 30 years. That piece of it will, and, we're not saying that we're the only ones that are going to figure out how to do that at all. But once we figure that piece out, and we're moving into that right now, then we think that it gets very easy for institutional capital to get involved with us and with a few other providers like us. And then once they have like a round of success or something like that, it's over. But the difference between this and, for example, like the institutional builders like Lennar is, I think that capital is going to pour into very small developers because the big developers aren't going to do this. They may figure it out and stand it up, maybe create a division. But I really think that's why I think there's going to be so many billionaires made out of this, is because the money's real. And I mean, you can do some math without thinking too hard on it. If I've got 500 some odd units going and they're netting 200,000 plus in equity per project, it's a decent amount of money. But you start multiplying that by 2 or 4 and it gets pretty wild. And so the returns are very attractive. But my thought process is taking those returns and translating that into capital flowing into this problem, right? And so I think you're probably 2 years away from like some real viable product. But if I were an investor listening to your podcast, what I would think is, if this is a model that you like and you want to move into that, I would think, I need to start today, and I'm going to move so that when capital markets start to break open on this, I don't have to go raise all the money. It's just going to walk in my door. But you have to be in a position where you can show that. And once you are, that's very attractive because the returns are very high. One of the things that we have done in the last few years, we created a community, because I have so many of my friends over the last 4 years that call me up and spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes on the phone with me talking about a potential deal that they want to do. And I'm like, dude, I can't, even if you could pay me $1,000 an hour, like I can't do it. I don't have the time to do that. So we created this community. It's a paid community. It's like, we don't really make any money off of it, not relative to what we do, but it's a place where we recorded a whole bunch of content and tell people how we're doing exactly what we're doing. We hide nothing. Like, I have nothing to hide. But then in that process, we have calls where we get on and people will bring us their deals and we'll walk through it and we'll talk through those things. And then when they have questions, they go into the app and they ask us a question so that everybody can see it, so that we're all learning together on how to do things. And, I always tell people in there, it's like, you guys are going to push back and teach me something that I don't know. And that's great. Like, we don't know all the things in this space. We know more than probably most, but that is one of the things that we have done to kind of create a space where people can at least avoid a lot of the flaming pits that we've fallen into. And we have lost millions of dollars to make tens of millions of dollars. Like, that's what's happened. And that's cool. Fine. But also, like, some of that, Mr. Beast said that consultancy is a cheat code. I love it. I love it so much. When he's trying to start up his chocolate brand, he called up the next biggest chocolate brand, or the biggest chocolate brand that was doing sustainable chocolate, like not child farmed or whatever. And flew him out. They spent a couple days with him. I'm sure he paid him plenty of money. Tony Chocolonely is what it's called. But that's it. Like, he did that, and that saved him a lot of time and money and helped him figure out a lot of those constraints very quickly. And so that's our goal in that. And so for anybody that wants to scale this, me, Thatch Nguyen, I don't care. Go find somebody that is doing a lot of this kind of business and dive into that. Because whatever you pay them, it will be worth it.
It's amazing, man. All right, to kind of bring it home, I mean, there's been so much in this too. I got to have you back on another time at some point. So last question for you. What is one belief you hope that builders never lose?
There is something very emotional about walking into a product that you have created for the first time and seeing, like, this is where somebody's going to live for a long time. And I don't want people to lose that feeling. My business partner, Ethan, who's also my brother-in-law, was telling me about the first time that his wife walked into one of our 3-bedroom units. And he's like, yeah, she just started crying. I'm going to cry. I don't know. I get emotional. But she said, now I get it. She's like, I see, like, why you've been working a lot of these long hours and like what we're doing here, because it's a needed thing. And the work that you do as a builder matters. It matters. And especially in this space, like if you're building for middle housing, it matters. And I don't want people to lose that light, because if they do, like, it's all left to Lennar. These institutional builders are going to build the very most profitable thing regardless. And there is no shade on, but it also doesn't provide directly to the need that we have. It all aggregates. And if you can keep that wonder that what I did is valuable to another person besides myself, not just the workers, but the people that get to call that home, like, that will be a very good driver to help sustain you.
It's an amazing answer. All right. So if people want to get in touch with you, they want to see, learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn at Jared Jones on LinkedIn, or on Instagram, we're Middle Housing Partners. Those are great places to connect, or our website's middlehousingpartners.com.
Thank you, Mr. Jared, the Microdevelopment King Jones.
Thanks.
That's it for this episode of the Builder Nation podcast. If it gave you something to think about, hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's leveling up. Until next time, keep building.